The day my grandmother was buried, my sisters were already dividing her jewelry on the kitchen table. I remember standing in the doorway watching them, Claire holding up a strand of pearls to the light, Dana arguing over a sapphire ring, and thinking, Grandma Ruth isn't even cold yet. But that's who they were. That's who they had always been. And me? I was the one who had spent every Sunday for the last 4 years driving 2 hours each way to sit with an old woman who sometimes forgot my name, but never forgot how to laugh. I didn't do it for the inheritance, which is a good thing. Because when the will was finally read, what I got made my sisters laugh out loud. They got the mansion, the savings, the investment accounts. I got the barn. Stay with me. Because what happened next changed everything. Our grandmother, Ruth Calloway, was not a woman you forgot easily. She stood barely 5 feet tall, but filled every room she walked into. She had grown up poor, built a life with her own hands, and raised 3 granddaughters after our parents split and scattered in ways I won't go into here. Claire was the oldest, confident, polished, the kind of woman who could make a dinner party feel like an audition. She and Grandma Ruth had a relationship built mostly on Sunday phone calls and birthday flowers, thoughtful on the surface, distant underneath. Dana was the middle child, practical almost to the point of coldness. She tracked things, money, favors, who owed what to whom. She visited Grandma Ruth at Christmas and occasionally in summer, always with a reason that had more to do with the lake nearby than with the woman in the house. And then there was me, Emma, the youngest, the quiet one, the one who drove those 2 hours every Sunday not because anyone asked me to, but because Ruth Calloway had a laugh that made you feel like the world still made sense, and I needed that more than I knew. She had been declining for about 2 years, slowly at first, then faster. I had been there for most of it, the good Sundays and the hard ones. The days she called me by my mother's name, and the days she looked at me with complete clarity and said things I still carry with me now. When she passed, it was peaceful. I was there. My sisters were not. The reading happened in a lawyer's office 3 weeks after the funeral. Heavy oak furniture, the smell of old paper, a ceiling fan turning slowly overhead. The kind of room where important things happen and nobody smiles. Mr. Hargrove, the attorney, read through the preliminary language while Claire checked her phone under the table, and Dana sat perfectly still with her hands folded, calculating. Then he got to the assets. The Calloway mansion and its contents. To Claire Ann Calloway. Claire actually exhaled. Not a sigh. More like a release valve opening. The investment portfolio and savings accounts. To Dana Marie Calloway. Then Mr. Hargrove cleared his throat. The Calloway barn and the parcel of land on which it sits, separately deeded as Parcel 7B under county record, to Emma Louise Calloway, in full and without condition. Silence. Then Dana said very quietly, "The barn." And Claire laughed. Not meanly, or maybe it was. I still don't know. But she laughed the way people laugh when something is so absurd it bypasses politeness entirely. "The barn, Emma. She left you the barn?" Dana patted my hand once. "You were always her favorite. I'm sure it meant something to her." The tone was gentle. The implication was not. I drove home alone that evening. I didn't cry. I just drove and thought about Ruth and wondered what she had been thinking. She had been sharp, even at the end. She didn't make mistakes. She didn't do things without reasons. So what was the reason? I waited 2 weeks before I went back to the property. Long enough for Claire to begin moving into the mansion. Long enough for Dana to have already spoken to a financial advisor about the accounts. The barn sat at the far edge of the property, connected by a gravel path the family had never bothered to maintain. It was old, older than the mansion actually, built by my great-grandfather before Ruth was even born. The wood had gone silver gray with age, the kind of color that looks like weather and time compressed into grain. One of the upper doors hung at an angle. A family of birds had made themselves at home in the eaves. I pushed the main door open and stood in the entrance, letting my eyes adjust. The smell hit me first. Not rot, not mold. Something else. Something almost familiar. Linseed oil, turpentine, the particular mineral sharpness of old paint. I stepped inside. Along the far wall, half hidden under drop cloths, were shelving units I hadn't expected. Solid wood, custom built, running floor to ceiling. And on those shelves, jars of brushes, rows of paint tubes, some collapsed and dry, others still sealed. Rags hardened into shapes, a palette with colors dried into small mountains of pigment. My grandmother had been an artist. I hadn't known. Not once in 4 years of Sundays had she ever mentioned it. I moved deeper into the barn. Against the back wall stood a large wooden work table, and on it, face down in a stack, wrapped in brown paper, were canvases. I lifted the paper on the first one carefully, the way you open something that might be fragile. It was a painting of a field at dusk. The light was extraordinary. That specific amber that only exists for about 7 minutes before the sun fully sets. The brushwork was loose but controlled, the kind of technique that looks effortless and takes decades to develop. In the lower right corner, small and precise, E. Marsh. I stood very still. I counted the canvases slowly. There were 23. Behind the shelving unit, I found it purely by accident. I was trying to move the unit away from the wall when I felt the panel shift under my hand. Not a dramatic hidden door. Just a section of the barn's interior paneling fitted differently from the rest. Hinged on one side, with a small iron latch flush against the wood. Easy to miss if you weren't pressing your palm flat against it. Inside was a space about the size of a large closet, dry, deliberately insulated, oilcloth lining the interior walls. On a shelf inside sat a wooden box, latched but not locked. Inside the box, letters, a stack of them, bound with kitchen twine, addressed in Ruth's handwriting, and a sealed envelope on top with my name on it. Emma. My hands were not entirely steady when I opened it. If you are reading this, then you found the barn, and you found enough curiosity to look further. That is exactly why I left it to you. The others would have sold it before summer. What is in that barn is mine. 40 years of work I kept private because I needed one thing in my life that belonged entirely to me. The name E. Marsh is known in certain circles. Mr. Hargrove has the contact information for a gallery in the city that has been trying to locate the source of several paintings for almost a decade. I suggest you call them before you tell your sisters anything. The land the barn sits on is yours outright, separately from the main property. I had it surveyed and redeeded 3 years ago. Do not let anyone tell you it is worth nothing. Get your own appraisal. I chose you because you showed up. Not for what I had, for who I was. That is rarer than people realize, and it should be rewarded. I love you, Emma. Now go make something of it. Ruth. I called the gallery the next morning. The conversation lasted 40 minutes. By the end of it, I was sitting on the floor of the barn because my legs had stopped cooperating. E. Marsh, my grandmother, was considered a significant undiscovered voice in mid-century American landscape painting. The gallery had authenticated 2 of her pieces that had surfaced at estate sales years ago and had been searching for the source ever since. 23 original canvases in documented condition were not a small thing. The independent appraisal on the land came back 2 weeks later. The parcel was larger than I had realized. It extended beyond the barn into the back acreage, and it sat on the edge of a corridor that county planners had been quietly acquiring land within for a major development expansion. Its appraised value was $1.1 million. Claire called me when she found out. The call was brief. She said that Grandma Ruth had always been eccentric, and that there must have been some confusion. I told her there wasn't. Dana sent a longer message suggesting we discuss the fairness of the arrangement as a family. I responded that I was happy to have that conversation with Mr. Hargrove present. Neither of them replied. I didn't sell the land immediately. I'm still not sure I will. What I did do was work with the gallery on a proper exhibition of Ruth's paintings. They opened 3 months later. The showing sold out. I sat in the front row on opening night and looked at 40 years of my grandmother's private world, the fields she had painted, the light she had chased, the name she had chosen to carry that work under. And I understood for the first time why she never told anyone. Some things are too important to share until you know they are safe. She knew they were safe with me. My sisters were not invited to the opening. They got the mansion and the money. I got the version of my grandmother that nobody else ever saw. I think I got the better deal.